What's up? My name is Ryan. Once again, I'm a firefighter in Southern California, and today I'm just going to be answering some questions that you guys have asked me. I made a post a little while back asking people to comment any questions that they had about working in EMS or being a firefighter. And I've also had quite a few people leave comments on my past few videos asking similar questions, so I'm just going to group them all together in this video, put them up on the screen, and answer them one by one. So let's just get right into it. Also, real quick, full disclaimer, I've only been a firefighter for about 2 years, and I've been an EMT for about 3.5, so I'm still relatively new in my career. I have had a pretty wide variety of calls and different experience, but just take in mind, I am not a salty veteran of this profession by any means. All right, with that out of the way, let's look at the first question. So Outsea Spear 740 asks, as a firefighter, were you scared to go into your first fire? Absolutely. I think anybody that says they weren't even a little bit scared is lying to themselves. Definitely more nerves than like the literal definition of scared, but you don't really know what to expect. I mean, you do a lot of training, you know, they can set up the fake fires at your academy, but it's all very clean and structured, and it's not like that in most real fires. You can practice your hose pulls in the academy, but when you do it for real, most of the time the house is going to be a mess, and there's going to be a lot of stuff in the front yard. You're going to get caught up on stuff, and just there's a lot of other variables that you don't really think about when you're new. It was more, am I going to screw this up? Like, am I going to get yelled at? Am I going to look like an idiot? Am I going to know how to do my job and remember all the things I'm supposed to do? So yeah, nerves are through the roof in the back of the engine. Even still, fires are what get me more nervous than really anything, but especially when you're new, it is like 1,000-fold. So Nuts112 asks, what's the best tip for the hiring process, and should I wait to get sponsored? I'm assuming you're asking if you should get sponsored, like to go to an academy. My answer to that is going to be no. Don't wait to get sponsored unless you have a good in for that, because it's definitely hard to have a department pick you up with no training and want to pay to sponsor you all the way through fire and EMT. Do it on your own and then start applying places. As far as the best tip for the hiring process, definitely find a way to make yourself stand out in the panel and chief interviews, because they're going to have a lot of applicants, and most people come in and answer all the questions pretty much exactly the same. So they're going to ask you, why do you want to be a firefighter? Don't just say, I want to help people, I want to serve my community. And I mean, it's good if you mean that, but that's kind of what everybody says when they get asked that question. So try to find a way to set yourself apart from the pack. You know, just for an example, if you've had to call 911 for a family member who had a medical emergency and the fire department came, use that. That's something that's memorable, that ties it directly to you and makes it seem more passionate and not just something that you want to do because it's going to be cool. Also, do research on the department that you're applying for, because they may ask you, why do you want to work for this department specifically? You know, if it's a Spanish speaking dominant area and you speak Spanish, talk about that. You know, say that you're passionate about working in that community because it's like where you grew up. Just to name a couple examples, there's a lot of different ways you could go about it. This may seem kind of like a no-brainer, but a lot of people forget this. When you walk in, you know, shake everybody's hand, thank them for taking the time out of their day to be there. You know, look everybody in the eye as you're talking to them. You know, look at everybody, don't just focus in on one person. You know, just be personable and have a smile on your face, have a positive attitude. Also, wear a suit. If you have a suit with a full coat and everything, wear that. If not, at least wear a dress shirt, tie, dress pants, and shoes. Don't just walk in there with a button up, some freaking chino pants, and Vans, because people do that all the time and it does not look good. All right, so Nodasa asks, what schools do you go to become a paramedic? I'm a paramedic apprentice in Germany, and I'd like to get a feel for how it works in the United States. Also, what drugs and equipment do you guys use? So I'm actually in paramedic school right now. I'm a little over halfway done. To be a paramedic, you have to have worked 1,000 hours as an EMT first, which a lot of people that aren't in EMS don't know that EMT and paramedic are two different ranks, essentially. So EMTs can only do basic treatments and wound care, essentially. Paramedics can do all invasive stuff, so they can intubate, they can do IVs, they can get a wide variety of medications for different things, they can read cardiac rhythms and do a lot of other stuff. So you have to work 1,000 hours as an EMT first. Once you do that, then most places require you to have an anatomy and physiology class done, complete that, then you can finally go to paramedic school, which is about a year long. It has 3 main sections. You have your classroom portion, you have your clinical portion, which is where you go to the ER and essentially work helping the nurses do whatever they need, basically just to get more practice with more advanced skills that you're going to be doing in the field. And then lastly, you go to your internship portion, where you'll be on an ambulance as the lead medic, and you are graded by somebody working to see if you can do it. So you are the one in charge for several months, and if you pass, then you finish medic school, you take your national registry test, and if you pass that, then you get your license in the mail. As far as drugs and equipment, we have all the cardiac arrest and cardiac emergency medications, things like epinephrine, adenosine, atropine, amiodarone. We have things like calcium chloride, magnesium, carry fentanyl, ketamine, which are both used for pain management, things for nausea, vomiting like Zofran, among many others. There's a huge list of medications we have to learn about and dosaging, indications, contraindications, and things like that. With the equipment, we have our Zoll cardiac monitors. At least we use Zolls in my area. We do 4 leads, 12 leads. They can do pacing. They can do cardioversion. We have supraglottic airways. We have the eye gels in my area. We also have our intubation kits. We do have the manual laryngoscopes, but we also have the ones with the cameras to be able to see into the larynx as well. We also have automatic CPR machines like the Lucas device or the AutoPulse. We also have needle decompression needles for sucking chest wounds and tension pneumothorax. The list goes on. There's a wide variety of equipment that we're trained on, and sometimes it can kind of vary from city to city as to what they actually use, but most of it is pretty standard across the country. So Dalton E2I asks, if you could give yourself one piece of advice on your first day in the fire service, knowing what you know now, what would it be? I'd say the biggest thing is you're gonna mess stuff up. I hold myself to a pretty high standard, and when you're new, it's inevitable you're gonna mess stuff up. Don't beat yourself up too hard about it. Everybody does the same thing when they're new. People may give you a hard time and talk crap. That's just the name of the game. Take it on the chin, use it as a way to prove to people that you know what you're doing, and move on from it. So Crusher Gamer 688 asks, what inspired you to be a firefighter? Love the content. Thanks, dude. I was in the Marine Corps, I was in the infantry, and when my time was coming to an end, I was trying to figure out what I was gonna do next. I wasn't really interested in college at that time. Truth be told, I was thinking about becoming a cop. I know, crazy. I really had no knowledge on EMS or firefighting at the time, but thankfully a good friend of mine from high school became a firefighter in my area, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. So I kind of picked his brain a little bit. When I got out, I went to EMT school, and the passion from there kind of grew. I learned more about what firefighters do and kind of what their job looks like, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So I just went through the process from there, went to the fire academy, got a job, and here I am today. Bear2899 asks, after seeing these heart-racing fires, how do you treat yourself to make sure your mental health is good? Have you ever had times where you felt like you couldn't keep working as a firefighter? So it's not so much the fires, it's more the medical stuff where I think mental health can be affected. You can run on some pretty crazy calls and see some crazy stuff, and it definitely isn't normal for most people to see multiple times a year or day or week, depending on the shift. I feel like I have a pretty good outlook on life and death overall, and depending on what you believe in, that can be a big factor in mental health as well. But outlets are huge. Having a good hobby, having stuff you enjoy doing, having friends and family and people you can go do stuff with is great for mental health. Me personally, I like to play video games. I like to shoot. I like to go to the gym. I like to go do stuff with my fiance and our friends when I have time, which has been limited lately, but I like to go camping, snowboarding, things like that. Just getting out of the house, doing stuff, and just kind of disconnecting from things. X-Fan asks, as firefighters, is there ever a situation where you can do nothing and only watch the fire burn? So short answer, no. There is something called going defensive on a fire, which is where there's no threat to life anymore at this point. Everything valuable has been taken out of the house that needs to be, and we're just going to protect everything else in the surrounding area. Basically just prevent the fire from spreading. We're going to keep it in check, hit it from a distance, and watch the structure essentially burn down. That's about the closest you'll get. There's always going to be hydrants 99% of the time and ways to get water. There's enough tools and resources at our disposal that we'll always be able to put it out if need be. Unless for whatever reason the entire city's water system isn't working, that should never happen. Charlie Jor asks, what happens if you're in the bathroom when there's a call? Is it a thing to be caught with your pants down? Yes, absolutely it is a thing, and it's terrible. Honestly, I think this is probably the most terrifying thing to me about being a firefighter. Anytime I go to do my business, it is always in the front of my mind that I need to be as quick as possible, because especially at the busier stations, that time is not protected, and you have to scramble to get yourself decent to run out to the fire engine or ambulance and respond to the call as quick as you can. So it does happen probably more frequently than you think. Cookie Jamie asks, what are the minimal physical requirements to be a firefighter, and can you give methods of training for people to get a head start before trying out? So it kind of depends on where it is you're applying. Typically across the United States, there's 2 physical tests that you have to have completed. It's either the BIDL or the CPAT. The CPAT's a lot more common. The BIDL is big in California. I don't really know if it is in other parts of the country as well. The BIDL, I haven't done a CPAT before. I've only ever done the BIDL, but everybody that I've talked to that's done both says that the BIDL is a lot harder. The biggest thing is cardio. I mean, you can be strong, that's great. That's a huge plus for sure for carrying ladders and doing other things, but cardio is going to be the biggest thing for all fire-related physical tests. Do the stair climber, go on hikes, go on runs, do it with weighted vests, work up to that, and just push yourself is honestly the biggest thing that I can say. The 2 tests, they're both timed evolutions. They're essentially obstacle courses for both that you do different things related to the fire service, like carrying ladders, pulling hose, and stuff like that. And you typically do it with gear or a weighted pack on. I definitely underestimated it when I first did it, so definitely work on your cardio. PO9CRN asks, so let's say you're driving a fire truck and you hit a person or car, what does the chief do to you? So it kind of depends. So accidents happen, and they've happened since I've been working. Depending on the circumstances or how it went down, they're going to make you write up an incident report. Depending on how everything transpired, they may have you do a drug test. But I actually do know of a story of somebody actually getting ran over by an ambulance. It happened way before I got hired, but allegedly somebody had already been hit by a car and was laying in the road. They were transporting a critical patient to the hospital. It was at nighttime. They didn't see him laying in the road. They were going with their lights and sirens on, ended up running him over, and due to their patient being critical, they had to keep going to the hospital. I think they were actually doing compressions en route. Unfortunately, the person they hit ended up passing away. It was a huge investigation into it to make sure that there was no possibility that anybody could have been at fault and that it was preventable, and they deemed it an unfortunate accident, and it's kind of just a very unfortunate situation. Blood King 99 asks, I want to be a paramedic. Do you have any suggestions for a broke teenager? So yeah, there's a few options. All in all, EMT school's not that expensive. I think after your tuition, uniforms, textbooks, and everything, it comes out to around $2,000 to $2,500, give or take. There are financial options like FAFSA or Workforce Development Program, which I think is a federal organization that you basically apply for, and they give you free money for school. If you can get EMT school done and you can hit your minimum hours to go to paramedic school, a lot of private ambulance companies, if you can work for one of those, or if better yet, a fire department, they will pay for you to go to paramedic school. But if they do pay for it, it's free, which is the pro, but the con is they make you sign a contract that you have to work for them for a certain period of time, and if you don't intend to stay with them, that can kind of be annoying. But usually by that point you'll have some money saved up so you can buy out of it, which usually isn't super expensive, but it'll cost you a little bit because you're essentially then paying for your school. But that's just a couple options for you. Deputy 556 asks, do you have any tips and tricks for me as a probie? So yeah, it kind of goes back to the question on how to have a good hiring process. Honestly, just having a good attitude goes a long way. Studying your tools, because you're going to be having to give classes on tools most likely. You're going to be getting critiqued a lot. People are going to be giving you a hard time. Just study your job the best that you can. Study the specs on the tools that you need to be learning about. It's all just a big game. Run to open the door for people, be the first one to answer the phone when it rings. Just stupid little things like that seem insignificant, but it's all just a part of the probationary employee lifestyle in the fire department. Just get through that year, which is typically how long it is, and then you can relax finally and watch TV and sit in the recliners. Lone Star 935 asks to go over the differences between general fire service or fire departments and wildland fire departments. So I do work for a city fire department, so my wildland firefighting knowledge is not as large as wildland specific firefighters. We do all learn basic wildland firefighting in the fire academy, and we do get dispatched on strike teams to wildland firefighters in California, especially during the summertime when it's fire season. I can't say how it is around the whole country, but in California specifically, we have Cal Fire, which is the state-run fire department, which does city and wildland, but they do have a wildland specific side. And then I know the U.S. Department of Agriculture has the federal wildland firefighters that can be deployed anywhere in the country to fight wildland fires. I don't think the wildland only sides require you to have any medical training. I know some positions do, and you can have it, but I don't think it's always a requirement. And the main difference is they just focus on the wildland, and they are very proficient at it. Questing Truck asks, how does cutting vents in the roof help? I was always under the assumption that you want to try and deprive the fire of oxygen. So you are 100% right in your thinking that you do want to restrict the flow of oxygen to the fire because that will feed it. So, you know, in the earlier stages of fighting a fire, you want to maintain door control and prevent a flow path from pulling in oxygen into the fire if it is oxygen starved, especially. Typically, if you're going to be venting over fire, at that point, it's going to be already most likely in the fully developed stage. And the main thought at that point is to release all the superheated gases and smoke that are now filling the house. And you want to create more visibility for the crews working interior, and you also want to make the space more tenable for any potential victims that haven't been found yet and may be hiding in a room somewhere. SoCal Presence asks, what is it like to drive and ride in American fire trucks as opposed to the smaller, more compact ones that are commonly found in Europe and specifically where he is, the Netherlands? So I'm not an engineer. Those are the guys that actually drive the engines here in America. But from my experience riding in them and seeing them drive, they can be big and bulky and a little bit awkward to make certain corners and like driving in through gates at gated communities. I think the biggest thing that sets them apart as far as how functional they are here as opposed to Europe is I think typically America has a lot wider roads and bigger neighborhoods where they are easier to fit in and get to where they need to go on average day-to-day calls. There are special occasions here and there where it is difficult, but usually it's not really an issue here. And I think at this point we're so used to having them and having that extra space to fit extra equipment that it's just what everybody's used to. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you to everybody that asked questions. I got a lot of good ones. I think I covered all of them. I'm going to be making some more videos here soon. I am making a video on the German firefighting game that I've had a number of people request of me. If anybody has any further questions, please comment more. I would like to do more videos like this in the future about working in the fire service, working in emergency medical services as an EMT, and soon as a paramedic. Yeah, thanks for the support. I appreciate anybody that watches, and have a good one.